Welcome to But Jesus Drank Wine.
And other stories that kept us stuck. I'm Mead.
And I'm Christy.
In this podcast, we'll explore the stories that kept us, stuck, wanting to drink and not wanting to drink all at the same time.
Join us as we show you that freedom from alcohol does not have to mean a life sentence of misery and missing out.
But actually means living an authentic life full of peace, joy, and purpose.
Hey, babe.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I am good. Gosh, it's a rainy day here in London. Shocker.
I was just thinking, somehow we have this way of recording when it's always raining there, but when it's
always raining here.
And it's been raining a lot here too. We keep talking about this, but how appropriate when we're going to talk about gray area drinking.
Oh,
our weather is gray.
Wow. Look at you. Mic drop. There's a way I can make little cheering noises on this little panel over here, but I'm afraid I'm going to mess the thing up. So let's just not do that.
Let's not. And just imagine what that would sound like.
Yay. She made a funny joke.
Was it really that funny? I don't think so. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe we're in silly moods again today.
Quite possibly. Yeah. We got to keep it fun.
Yeah.
When we're talking about these hard-hitting subjects,
Listen, we have to keep it light.
It does not have to be dark and heavy, ladies.
Yeah. Honestly, I say that too all the time with certain clients. I'm like, we're allowed to have fun here.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to, be that work. Let's figure even moving away from the whole, there's nothing to fix, there's nothing to solve. As we move towards questioning, getting curious and exploring our relationship to alcohol and exploring our relationship to all the things that maybe serve us or don't serve us. How do we know what does work for us? How do we know what exercising and what types of exercise are right for us if we don't ask, how does it make us feel? Just like we do with alcohol, and starting from that place of how does it make me feel? How does it serve me? How does it not serve me?
Yeah, which is such a good way to introduce our topic today, which is what is gray area drinking?
Wow. It's such a big question, right? And when I was starting this journey, so really in 2018 was when I was starting to think about this, and 2019 is when I finally was brave enough to really consider how alcohol was kind of getting in the way of my life. I mean, I didn't know what gray area drinking was. I had until I found freedom from it that I learned
too.
what it was. Yeah. So 2020.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when did the phrase, even the term even come into existence? And I tried to do a little research, and it's all over the shop on that one. So we don't even have an answer for you on that, because I did try to look it up. But I didn't know even, this begs the question, right? When you found that term, did it make you feel, what did it make you feel? Did it make you feel like, oh, okay, this is me, or I've got a camp I fall into, or was it like my drinking isn't bad enough? What? Tell me.
Yeah. So when I started a journey, I lived, and I think this is where traditionally people live. It's there's two extremes. You're either the, take or leave it kind of drinker, maybe whatever, maybe rarely drink, or you're the extreme, the vision of the person whose life is severely affected by alcohol is drinking, during the day and hiding it. And the classic quote unquote alcoholic. There's those two extremes, which is why I stayed stuck for as long as I did, because I didn't realize that, I, as someone who didn't fit either of those categories, could, not have a problem, because I still don't say that I had a drinking problem. I had a thinking problem for sure, which created drinking more than I intended to drink, and drinking, the thoughts about drinking and the questioning and all of those things. But I think we're moving away from the fact that there's just those two extremes. There is this big spectrum that comes with what would be classically defined now as alcohol use disorder, and what that spectrum looks like for people. Yeah. And that falls with mild, moderate, and severe. You can have different, varying degrees on that. And gray area drinking kind of falling into that. And so, yeah, when I first discovered what gray area drinking was, when I heard that term, I was like, yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, that's what exactly what explains my experience. Like from the outside looking in, you wouldn't look at me and think that she's somebody that has a drinking problem. And again, I didn't have a drinking problem, but I was drinking more than I wanted to be drinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, so I have a controversial take on this topic. No surprise. The thing that got me really hung up on like reading about gray area drinking, right, is like when if you get to the point like we have where we know that there's like a big fat zero like benefit to alcohol and there's no safe level of alcohol, right? Which is this is all like new information relatively, right? The fact that like Canada has like literally changed their drinking guidelines to like no, like if you want to be healthy, like the answer is zero. That's new and I get
Hmm.
that. But so like I was like, okay, well, but then what is if black is, you know, quote unquote alcoholic and we're supposed to be in gray, like what's white? Right?
Mm.
Like is
Love it.
it one at a wedding? And so for me, I was like, I understand how it could give some people like solace isn't the right word, but like, you know, make them feel a little bit better. But then I was like, oh gosh, here we are with labels again, you
Yes.
know? And I was
Yes.
just like, I don't want to, I didn't even want to call myself a gray area drinker because I didn't even really grasp what that meant. And it also, I felt like almost gave a little justification for being able to continue being a gray area drinker, right? Because if
Mm.
it's not over here black, if it's not like DEFCON 5 level, like you're like getting a DUI and losing your family, like maybe, you know, if it's a gray area, maybe you're okay, gray area. I'm like, you know, so I don't know.
Yes. Mm.
I don't know. I resonate with the idea of the alcohol use disorder spectrum like fully. Like, I don't know why. Maybe this is just the way my brain processes things, but like, again, it's just like it's what we say all along, right? Like the word sober doesn't ruffle my feathers, like it doesn't bother me, like you don't like to use it, and we're still really good friends.
Yeah. That's right,
You know
girl.
what I mean? So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you're saying because I think that it also speaks to what we kind of just started talking about too, where it's like we want to do this, we want to like we want relief from maybe the questioning, do I have a problem with alcohol? So we want to get into that space that like,
Yeah.
okay, as long as I'm so like, what they would define as, oh, I can't find my stat. I'll pull it up. But what you would define, oh, so like for alcohol abuse, women 7+ drinks per week,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
or 3+3 and plus or in one night. Men is 14 a week, or more than four or more a night. When we start trying to put you're exactly right. Like for me, once I started questioning my relationship to alcohol, if I had these parameters, it's like, oh well, phew, as long as I'm not, you know, hitting that mark, then I don't have a quote unquote problem. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. But the problem with that is like we get to call for ourselves when we want to, like when it's taking up space in our lives. And that's part of this whole
Yeah.
thing. It's like we're giving our power away to what these standards are. And if that works for you, great. But it is something that I think for sure has, constricted me in the past because it was the same with the living in between the two extremes. Well, if I don't have outward detrimental effects to my life, then I can keep on doing what I'm doing. I was using that as like the end all be all to say, you don't have a problem and just stay, keep doing what you're doing, which only increased over time because of the addictive nature of the substance, right?
Yeah.
When I was really what I was doing was my inner wisdom was kind of like speaking up and saying like, hey, pay attention to this. So I was ignoring what I
Yeah.
felt to be true based on this, so I think that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think too, it's like it's one of those things too. It's like the second we're like trying to like make sense of this, you know, label, it's like we're getting out the the stats on the number, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
push comes to shove, like it's not about the amount of drinks, right? It is
Yes.
not about the amount of drinks. And this has become so just even more, I don't know what the word is, like concretely just like evident to me in the last like few weeks where I'm dealing with clients that have like gone a stretch and then had a data point and the reactions that they have like or just go back and listen to Lauren's episode, right? Like they
Mm-hmm.
go a stretch of not drinking, they have a drink, and like the effects of like on their like emotions and their
Yeah.
sleep and their all of their things, it's like that's from one drink, right? Like if we're consuming alcohol on a regular basis, we just don't even realize like how it affects our bodies and how it like is such a toxic substance to our bodies. And so again, it comes down to like it's not about the number. Even one can be bad, and one every once in a while is probably not considered gray area drinking. So I don't know. I don't
It,
know.
yeah, part of that journey of like resourcing for ourselves and finding our own agency in what is right for us versus living just really based on like, okay, well, this says it's okay, like give it like we need permission or something
Yeah, it's another
versus
story. It's another story.
correct.
It's
Pointing
just
that,
like
yeah.
but it's just like but Jesus drank wine.
Correct. It's just another way to justify something that we are feeling conflict over and that needs our attention. And that's what I love about welcoming in discomfort or tension or internal stress, that I call it offness. When I am feeling offness and discomfort, I know now to welcome it in because it is there to show me something that needs my attention. And
Yeah.
I've never had an experience where, since being free from alcohol and learning this, that I haven't really found something, some kind of growth opportunity or something powerful, something revealed to
Yeah.
me that was huge in this just journey of life that has helped me in that. And that's what I think we miss when we are living in that narrow place of like, well, this is what the guidelines, say, and so as long as I'm not doing that, then I'm okay. But also, are you okay? Like,
Yeah.
how is it?
Yeah.
How is alcohol serving you? How is it? Not out of judgment. Like, how is it serving you? How is it not? Where do you wish that something was different? And just, yeah, kind of using that. But I do know when we talk about like gray area drinking, what I what I like to share is the thoughts that were going through my head that, again, kind of to to show me that there was a problem, not a drinking problem, a thinking problem where I was
Yeah.
stuck, that had me living not where my values and my actions were aligned. Like
Yeah.
that was at the bottom, the source of all of it, is that
Yeah.
I was showing up in a way that was not aligned to maybe God's best for, well, not maybe, but God's best for me. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
being able to pay attention to that conflict, that tension, and to get curious about it, that's obviously, that was the biggest part of leading to freedom from alcohol, was that first turn
Yeah.
to curiosity.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I feel like that's such a great example of like a better question to ask, right? Like,
Yes.
are you living your authentic like self? Which sounds so
Hmm.
coachy and cheesy, but it's true. Like when I work through like values, and I'm sure you do the exact same thing with clients, and you
Hmm.
say like, we should actually like sidebar, we should do a whole episode on values, but right. But like, but when I sat down and like did that exercise for myself, and family faith and family were my top two, and I couldn't make it to church on Sunday, and all I wanted to do was be out partying and not be with my kids. It's like, well, gosh, right?
Yeah.
This is weird, but I'm a gray area drinker, so it's fine. you know?
But yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah, and how many of us are stopping to even consider what we value in it, and where is that
that's
disconnect?
good.
Like
Yeah,
that's where, I mean, I certainly was not,
me neither.
because I was buried by all of the stories about alcohol, stories about myself,
Yeah.
I mean, stories, which is, why I love that we did that, the episode, like the stories about ourselves from like that shame kind of lens. Those are all things that play, that keep us in that space away from curiosity and thinking about like, well, why do
Yeah.
I feel this internal tension, this noise, this chaos? Like that's what I described. When I was stuck, it was, I knew that there was like this just internal offness and I couldn't put my finger on it. And
Yeah.
paying attention to that
Yeah.
has been more valuable than researching, what is right for me based on what the research says, which by the way, you can find research to support all kinds of things.
Yeah. 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 Although the ones that say drink red wine are funded by big alcohol, just in case you guys didn't know that.
Correct. Yeah. Once you do start digging, then you see how it's all like, yeah, interconnected anyways, and then there's that. But for sure it was like, for me, I think about like the rules I had around drinking. Like for
Yeah.
me, like if, describing myself as a gray area drinker where from the outside looking in, you wouldn't say I had a drinking problem because I didn't fit that classic model, but I certainly had these rules where I was trying to, and I would break those rules. And then guess what?
Yeah.
Breaking the rules made me want to drink more, or,
Yeah.
and drinking more than nobody intends to be
No,
hungover.
yeah.
Do you know anybody
No.
that intends to go out to be hungover?
No, but I used to plan it into my schedule.
Sure.
I,
Yes.
I used to be like, oh, that's going to be a really wild Friday night. I
Yes.
cannot plan anything until at least lunchtime on Saturday. Which, like, that is
Yes.
how in the world, like, that's just, I mean, listen, to each their own. Hashtag no judgment. If that's you, like, I get it. I was there. But
Same. I was too.
I'm just so glad I don't have to go back to that. Like, I would so much rather get up and play paddle on a Saturday morning, you know? Like,
And that's just it. Like we got comfortable with that being our normal and that being
yeah,
okay, but we didn't intend for it to be that way. Right.
yeah,
Like, I mean, at least for me, because I absolutely can relate to that. It's like, yeah, I'd have to, if I had a weekend and I had a social event, then it was like, okay, what do I have to clear to make sure that I can recover from that? But I didn't want a hangover. I didn't intend to have a hangover, but I knew it was possible. And so
yeah.
that,
Inevitable.
yeah, like the result of not living with intention, really just like kind of in reaction to how
Yeah,
I was going to be drinking that night.
yeah. That's so good. I love that, like, not living with intention. And you said something earlier that I want to circle back to because it's so good. Like, it was just such a great way of like illustrating how alcohol is like the first piece of the puzzle that once it is removed, you're able to do all of these things that we're talking about. You're able to like think about your values, and you're able to like think about living life with intention, and you're able to like, when you think about that, like it is wild. It's wild what it actually ends up opening up for you and me and for everybody that like kind of has done this work that we know, right? It's just like you're able to finally like access the part of your brain that like, I don't know. That saying this out loud right now just makes me, oh my gosh. And I actually said, okay, so I was getting really into it. I hope I'm allowed to say this. I was getting really into it when I was meeting with a publisher who is not my publisher. And I got to this point, I was getting really worked up, and I was like, and it just makes me feel like, how evil is it? How much is it the work of the devil, right? How much is it something that gets us totally thrown way off track, right? And this is the interesting point. I'm going to double check that I'm allowed to say this. But that publisher, that was the one thing that they took from an hour conversation, is that I said alcohol was like basically like evil. And they're like, that's too harsh. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. They're like, that's a little too far. She said alcohol is evil. Like, we want to like keep everybody like, it's got to be a little more like loosey goosey, like whatever. And I was like, that's what they took from that hour. I mean, I
Yeah.
got myself worked up, but do you know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it
Well,
really is really evil if you think about it.
absolutely, because it's not something that as we drink more of, then we end up over time drinking less of, right? Like so
Yeah.
it it only goes one way, to taking up more space in our lives. And whether that's time drinking it or quantity that we're drinking or thinking space around it or the worry, the regret, the shame, the just the mental real estate occupied by it. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, if it's getting in the way, if anything
Yeah.
is getting in the way and taking up more space in our lives, and that
Yeah.
keeps us from really, the vertical focus on
Yeah.
what and who should be the focus of, our lives, like that's, of course, that would fall into that kind of category, I think, for sure,
Yeah.
of evil. But
Yeah. Especially too, like when we end up breaking down like reasons why we're drinking and when we go through like turning around thoughts and getting really like, really deep about what we're thinking and is it true and is it true based on like the word. And when you really sit with someone and all of the thoughts literally normally boil down to that person, myself included, is like a worth, right? Like not being
yeah,
good enough somehow. Where does that messaging come from?
yeah,
Right? Like,
yeah,
so it's just like it actually is. And I actually had a client say this to me, and it was so interesting. She did some research about how, like, wine and spirits, like spirits as in how hard alcohol, the reads, that I don't know the background on this, maybe you do, about like that is why, like, it's labeled spirits because of the, like, kind of, we need to do some research on that because I don't want
yeah.
to like misquote. But do you know what I mean? Like it's called spirits because it's like it's doing deals with the devil. Where we were trying to keep it light, but then we accidentally did it.
Oh my gosh, I love it. You just never know where it's going to take us. You just
No, we said we were at the giggles again, and then we started talking about Satan's best friends. I don't know
yeah.
what's happening.
But I love it because it's so true, and I think it's so true. But you're exactly right, and that's where, I mean, I had a client just this week. It was just so beautiful. Like she's like, I have my life back. Like I feel like my life
Yeah,
is back. She was so stuck. She does not fit into that. Like no one, like she's not someone that from the outside looking in would look like it. I mean, at all. She's like looks exactly like I was. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm like my life is back because she's living from that place of choice now versus when we're stuck. When we're stuck, we don't have choice. When we're buried by all those stories, we're just doing things, we're reacting to things, we're just trying to like
make it
just
through.
keep
Yeah,
swimming. Like I think of like Dory,
yeah,
like just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
yeah,
And we don't realize that isn't how we have to live. Like we
yeah,
can choose to actually live differently where we are empowered. We do have choice. We can say, I don't know if I fit into this like clinical definition of a problem drinker. But you know what? Like alcohol is taking up too much space in my life. I'm just going to get curious about this. I mean, we could do the same thing with things that are traditionally healthy things. Like, I mean, it could be exercise. Maybe exercise is,
yeah,
I mean, it
yeah,
doesn't matter what the thing is. It's how is it serving you or not serving you? And just at least asking that question, which I would imagine the people who are listening, the women that are listening to this podcast, they are in that phase of like questioning their relationship to alcohol. I want to say, like, I celebrate you for doing that work of questioning because it's in that questioning that we lead to being able to choose for ourselves what is right
yeah,
and best. And how we get there, I mean,
yeah,
that's all figure outable. But if we're not even
yeah.
asking the questions, then we just stay stuck doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of what Pastor David said on his first appearance on the pod, right? Where we talked about like idol worship and like how totally normal things. Like I think he brought up the example of like our kids' sports or like, our kids'
Mm-hmm.
passions and like how do you find out? Like you look at your time and you look at your bank
Yeah.
balance and it's so true. It is. It's so true. Anything can sneak in there and like not to freak out anybody, but like it does happen, right? When you remove alcohol, then there's normally other things that you have to look at. But the awesome thing is that like once you kind of like get to a place where you're like used to taking thoughts captive and turning them around and being curious about your thinking and like all of that good stuff. Like you have the methodology and the tools to be able to look at the other stuff, you know? But
Yeah.
but it's like it's again, I know we've said this 3,000 times, but it's forever work we get to do. And yeah, but
Yeah.
like who would we be without that work, you know? Like who would we be if we were like still like walking around like stories and zombies and someone wrote about, I don't remember what book I read it on, but I thought it was so powerful. I think I even pulled the car over. I was listening to it about just like a sailboat with like no motor being like tossed in the middle of a storm, like no, like literally can't get from point A to point B. I was like, oh my God, that's me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always talk about the like I was at the pinball in the pinball machine, just wait, being just bouncing off of
Ooh, that's a good
everything,
one.
just yeah,
That's a
and
good one.
like I'm
That's good.
exhausted just picturing.
Oh my gosh, me too. I'm literally getting tired thinking about my former life right now.
It was exhausting, but when you get to like what you just said, I love so much. It's like that we get to look at these other things. We don't have to do any other work, but when we are smarter and more conscious and more intentionally living, we're not burning all of this other energy trying to manage all of the distraction and the stress and the conflict that we feel, that we have space to go, oh, okay, like this is bringing up, like for me, the next thing was like, okay, this people pleasing tendency I have that I used to say was, a strength of mine. I'm noticing that like I could do this so-called work with anything, any tendency or habit that every
Yeah.
addiction that I have, where it's like, how does people pleasing serve me and how does it not serve me? Oh, I get to ask that question. Like, I don't know. Let me explore it. Let me see. And that is when I realized, wow, this tendency comes out in this way. I see this pattern, and this is where it's again like it doesn't have me living God's best for me. Okay, now I know where I can continue, but I'm consciously choosing to do that so-called work versus when I'm in the pinball machine just being thrown around, bouncing back and
Yeah.
forth because I'm stuck and I don't have any choice. I'm just always reacting to everything. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, that other way was
Um,
exhausting.
so exhausting. And you just made me think of something too, like when we had Carla Adkins on the pod, she was talking about like the parable of the, like the talents. And
Mm.
I ended up like randomly sidebar. Are you going through Tara Lee Cobbles like Bible in 1 year thing still? Or did you recommend that to me or did I find that on my own?
No, I was doing, I don't know how to say it.
The one in the
The other
app.
one. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, well, so I ended up like literally that's where I landed in Matthew, like the day after we talked to Carla, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so
Mm.
good. And I was thinking about like I was before I was the person that was like literally burying the talents in the dirt, right? And then like wondering why I didn't have like I wasn't like my life wasn't like more I don't know, like open. Why wasn't God giving me more to like deal with or handle? Why was it so small? I mean, obviously, I wasn't thinking of any of this when I was drinking, but now in retrospect, it's very clear. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, right? Like now that I'm like taking those talents out and like doing things with them, right? Like he's giving me more and more responsibility, and he's giving me more and more things to like I don't know, all the things, this podcast, like all of it. And I didn't, it's just, it's such an example of like what it opens up for you again, you know?
Yeah. Leading to that abundant life. I mean,
Yeah.
right? Like when we're living that way. And that's something too that this could be a little sidebar as well, but like knowing all of that in my previous, so like before 5 years ago, knowing all of that didn't help me unstuck myself to wanting to live that way either. Like there were so many stories that had me buried in about myself, about alcohol, about all the things that were supposedly like keeping me, helping me keep swimming. And it wasn't until I again like created that space and time from finding freedom from alcohol. That's what I didn't realize. Like I can look back now and see how much space that occupied, how much neural real estate that occupied. So even
Yeah.
just even if I had, come across that in my reading, it still wouldn't have landed with a
Yeah.
like, okay, yes, I see how I'm doing that. But that's
Yeah.
that's the fog that I think that being stuck in the drinking cycle, like not just because of the neural real estate, but because of the chemical substance. I mean, it takes 7 to 10 days for it to be completely out of your body. So if you
Yeah.
are just someone who's having a couple drinks every few nights, even like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
chemical is staying in your body and it's keeping you with elevated levels of adrenaline and cortisol in response to what you're putting in it. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
from that place of stress, you're already losing that ability to kind of see clearly, right? And see where there is choice in how we in what we do, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's the drinking to relieve anxiety and stress. It's just like, I mean, they're all big lies, right? But like one of the biggest, I
Mhm.
think, just like lies ever because of also how it snowballs. Because, right, like it's just you drink to relieve anxiety and you make yourself more anxious, and then you drink to relieve anxiety and then you make yourself more anxious, and you don't sleep, and then you shotgun coffee, and then you're raising your adrenaline even more, and you're like, I mean,
Eh, yeah, you're drinking more to alleviate the symptoms of having put
yeah.
alcohol in your body in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
But man,
I
it
always
is
like to say it's like wearing like a pair of like high heels, right? Like
mm,
you wouldn't have the pain if you hadn't put on the heels in the first place, right?
yes. Yes, but you keep so it's like putting on the heels so that you can feel the relief of taking them off. When really, if you
Yeah.
never put them on your feet in the first place, which I mean, can we just have a little sidebar there too and say, thank goodness that like sneakers are fashionable
Oh my
these days
gosh, I know.
because
Let's like just hope they never go out of
yeah,
style, please.
because it has I love not
Wait,
ever
but
having to put on a heel.
what were we wearing like during the day before sneakers were allowed to be like cool again? Were we wearing like ballet flats? I can't remember.
Probably, I think so.
Yeah, I hope that we don't go back to those either because they weren't like so very supportive. Oh my gosh, we sound so old.
I know when we think about shoe wear, except for the nights when we would go out when we would wear the heels, but then there was a time that we could transition into, at least in the wintertime, like heeled boots and have a little bit
Yeah,
more comfort. But
yeah,
anyway,
that's true. That's true.
but to get back to the original point is you wouldn't keep putting high heels on every single
Yeah,
day just to feel that relief
from
when you
taking the
take
heels
them
off.
off.
Yeah,
And that is what I did with alcohol, again, unknowingly, when I was stuck in that cycle. And I'm just so grateful. I'm just like, oh my gosh, literally praise God that I never have to do that again.
yeah. You said something earlier that I think we should come back to, and that is like, making all the rules for ourselves and
Mm.
how like slowly but surely we end up like breaking those rules over and over again.
Oh,
And this is like not one that I like to admit, but like in the spirit of like honesty, obviously I think everybody's rule is like don't drink in the morning. Obviously, unless you're at brunch, that's fine.
unless you're
But
on
like
vacation or unless, so there are
or
caveats,
you're
right?
or you're at an airport, yeah. But there were definitely like several times that like my hangover was so bad I put like cold white wine in a coffee mug
Yeah.
and thought like I just if I could just like keep this little whatever quarter of a coffee mug
Hmm.
down, like I'll feel better. And it came and went quite like, I didn't stop drinking that weekend, did I? No. Just kept going.
Well, I mean, that's such a good point too, because of like, I mean, yeah, for me, it was a Bloody Mary or a mimosa. As long as it's a
Yeah.
Bloody Mary or a mimosa, you can drink in
Yeah.
the morning.
Yeah.
But but yeah, like I mean, that would have been one of my rules. Like it can't be anything different from that. But
Yeah.
how I would the story that would make me feel better, and and the way that it works, that does make you feel better because it's relieving the
Yeah.
problem that has been caused by drinking in the first place, and
Yeah. The
that's
alcohol
where
withdrawal. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we're just
Yeah.
drinking for relief and not getting it. And again, like I think it bears repeating as well. Like we're not judging. Like I feel like we get all like worked up and fired up and because this it's like I
We do
didn't
get
like
really worked up.
but
We
who
would like to
knew?
wait, you guys, just so everybody knows, like we get really worked up and I get hot and we're like not allowed to have fans going because it interferes with the sound. So every
So we're
time we stop
sweating.
recording, I'm like, whew, I need another shower.
So we're like sweating
Does
doing
that
this
mean
and we're
does
still
that mean
having fun.
perimenopausal? Or is
No.
that just because we're just getting really worked up? Okay, fine.
No, it just means we're passionate. Passionate makes us sweat. But and the hot lights and all the things.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But that like I just want to re-emphasize like we are not judging. Like
No, we're
us
not judging.
sharing this is where I'm more like looking at myself going like how did I miss all of that? But
Yeah.
of course I did and I'm just so grateful that I did, that I don't that's
Yeah.
not the way it is now.
Yeah. But it is just like such a bananas massive blessing because like when I look back, like I didn't know it didn't look different. Like my drinking did not look different to anybody that I
Yes.
knew. And so,
Same here.
I honestly, like, I needed COVID. I really needed COVID. And I'm sorry if that sounds bad. I know COVID was horrible and it was like, a total and complete horrible, horrible situation for so many people. But without COVID, I wasn't like, I don't think I would have hit the pause button and like, actually had a minute to think about this. And I'm just so glad because that was when I had the space to be like,
Mhm.
wait a minute. And then when you start to feel better and it's like, wait a minute,
Like
why am I doing that?
it's literally like who knew that this could be this good? And I always say,
Yeah.
like for when I was in that space, I knew something. I had that internal conflict, that noise, that chaos. I felt like I was that pinball in the pinball machine. I didn't have that, understanding for it then, but I because I was so scared to have to look at my drinking, like because I stayed stuck in that place for a long time where, you know, there was a part of me that wondered about what life would be like without alcohol. And simultaneously, my thoughts were, I can't imagine never drinking again.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And that is, I think, if you're in a place where you have that, by the way, like you're not alone in that. I mean,
Yeah.
that is so normal. And I think our
Well, I
tendency
mean, don't you hear that on every single discovery call? I hear that in
yes.
every single discovery call.
Yes.
Every
Yeah.
single one,
Like
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
How many people come to us and say, "No, I don't want to not drink again." Like I just and I'm like, "Yes, exactly. Find peace with your relationship to alcohol. It's not about never drinking again. It's about finding freedom from where you're being controlled by it and stepping back into,
Yeah.
getting unstuck, stepping back into that place of choice with it." And so
Yeah.
I just happen to end up where I'm free from it and my choice, I have no desire to drink it. So my choice is not to drink it. But
Yeah.
everybody's journey is unique in that. It's like, what are you really looking to feel? It's not about how much you're drinking or not drinking. And
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, you just said something so good there, and like so. I think it's so good what you just said about choice because I love the whole thing about choice, anyways. But like, not feeling like you have a choice when
Mm-hmm.
you're drinking obviously feels horrible, but then also not feeling like you have a choice when you're in a method of trying to figure out your alcohol, no shade to AA, but AA is like
Yeah.
all the choices are just off the table for
Yes.
you, right? You don't have a choice to be seen anywhere. And that's, I think, so
Mhm.
good, right? Because it's like, all we want to say is you have choices. That's literally all we want to tell you. Is that you have choices.
Whatever it is you do or don't do, let it be because you're consciously choosing it. You're not
Yeah.
just reacting or chasing relief from something that is, causing whatever, fill in the blank with whatever it is. Yeah. Like and that's where when I was stuck, it was that when I started thinking about it, once I finally was like, well, maybe I should really look at this alcohol thing. I'm noticing that I want to drink and I don't want to drink all at the same time. I'm noticing that, like, if I try not to drink on a Friday night at a social event, I end up drinking. Like these are things that I was starting to notice. And the tendency is to start judging ourselves for that, because then we start to panic. Oh gosh, this must mean I have a problem. Oh my gosh. The tendency is to panic there. And this is where I would say that is where the compassion and the grace comes in, and the celebration for, if you're asking the questions, that means you've done like 80% of the work to freedom from whatever substance or habit or tendency or whatever is keeping you stuck. That's 80% of the work just in asking the question. So celebrate that. And then you're 80% on the path to being able to choose, like, consciously and with intention, like, what you want for your life. And it's vastly different when you're on the other side of that. And I think that's something that for me was, I didn't realize. And when I was locked into that idea that, like, either like you're a normal drinker or you're a problem drinker, and therefore you have to quit drinking and do it the traditional method way, both of those are have tos. Like, in both of those, I'm not choosing. That's behavior focused, and this is what I have to do, versus where I am now, where it's like, no, like, I don't have to do anything. I could choose to drink anytime I want to. I just haven't wanted to in over 3.5 years. Praise God. Like, it's choice. Yeah.
I love that. Should we bring in our friends? Our good friend Tina?
Bring on the tiny Tina. Yeah.
What should our tiny Tina today be? I mean, just thinking out loud here on the fly. My whole tiny Tina from this episode is actually how we wrapped up, right? You have choice, and if you identify with a label of like gray area drinker, if it makes you feel good, it makes you feel seen and heard, and it's a situation that you feel like, yeah, that's me, then I think that's awesome. And I think that you should use it. If it makes you feel like you have to label yourself, or you have to start counting drinks and figure out where you stand in a spectrum in order to like start asking different, bigger, better questions, then like throw it out. Like, you have choice. Yes, it's a spectrum. I love like the idea of the spectrum. I get that. But like, also like, the questions are like, and I'm just going to throw it back to Miss America, Kristen, Miss USA, like, what is highest and what is best for you? Like, is it best? What is best for you? Is it holding you back? Could your relationships be better? Could your relationship with your kids be better? Or your husband? Like, could you possibly have more energy? You know what I mean? Like, is there even one small, tiny chance that half of the stuff that you and I are saying are the benefits that we've experienced are the benefits for you? Like, is it possible that you could actually feel joy, like, to the point where you haven't felt it in like years and years? Just get curious again, and you get to decide. That's my Tina. That was a long-winded one. Usually you have the long-winded ones, but today I have one.
That's you. And that's where I'm going to say, yeah, I don't even have anything to add to that, because that was so good. Just the possibility. Is it possible? And don't take it from us. Like, we're not here to say like, this is the way.
Take it from us.
Yes. If you've heard anything, you take nothing else.
Literally, don't take anything from us. Go do your own research.
But research maybe through the lens of daring to ask those questions. Is it possible? And this is what, we always here I said I wasn't going to add anything, but here I go. And this is, we've talked about on other episodes, but it's like being able to say, is it possible? You know what? I don't know. But why not find out? You can always go back to the way you're doing things. If it's not better. If your relationships don't improve, if you don't get energy, but why not try it? You've always done vacation with alcohol. Why not try it without? Just see, be open-minded, just be curious. You can always go back to the old way. Why not try your life without alcohol for a time, enough time to where it's out of your system and your body can get back to homeostasis and you can really experience some of those physical benefits that help. Yeah. Like, why not try it? There's always, as long as you have choice. I mean, it's up to you, babe.
Yeah. I love that. This is a fun one. It went by really fast. I hope it went by fast for you, listener. Because it went by fast for me. I'm so hot.
So hot.
All right, let's hit stop so we can turn on our fans. Bye, everyone. See you next Monday. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. You can find all of our episodes at butjesusdrankwine.com, and make sure you follow us over on the gram at Love Life Sober with Christy and Mead at I'm Not Sober, I'm Free.
To learn more about what we do, you can visit our websites at meadhollandshirley.com and lovelifesober.com.
Take a screenshot of this podcast and share it with a friend or two.
And don't forget to subscribe so you don't have to worry about missing a single episode. And if you love what we're doing, please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify.
This helps more women who are feeling stuck and alone in the overdrinking cycle to find hope and encouragement.
Thanks, ladies. We so appreciate you. We'll see you next week.